There's nothing like going for a beautiful fly, enjoying the scenery, sharing it with family and friends, or just taking your passengers and doing your job. Until all of a sudden, the lights go out and no one's home. Full electrical failure. That's what happened to me the other day, and I'm going to take you all the way through it, what was involved and the decision-making processes that took place. Plus, we'll have a bit of a chat about a few other things as well. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 3614, Ivan Mallow 7 POB with altitude.
Coordinating Halo and Runner, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Send by star 9000, 1013, K5 25.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 172 of Flight Training Australia podcast. Podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host, Trent Robinson. Thank you for joining me. This episode is brought to you by myself, Trent Robinson Aviation, my very own flight school here in Darwin. And I love flying with all of you. I love aviation. I love sharing tips, tricks, interviews, and everything else. And that's what this podcast is all about. And it is a free podcast. It is here for you all to enjoy and share. But some of you, like Angus, Paul, Lachlan, Matt, Brett, Luke, Linda, Cody, David, Christopher, Bree, Kaylin, Kevin, Philip, Fab, Petrie, Brett, Jeremy, Toby, Holly, and so many more of you jumping on board to Patreon there. Some paid memberships, some just getting the added benefits of being on Patreon there and the exclusive content. Definitely worth jumping on board. And like I say to everybody, if you do appreciate the work and time and effort that I put in and the benefit that you get out of it, then that is one little way that you can help me out and sign up. One-off little donation or a annual membership for even cheaper rates. It's all there. Patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. Love to have you there. And thank you to everyone, all the Patreon supporters that have joined up so far. So some interesting things going on up here at Darwin, and I'm not going to go into it completely, but airports across Australia, I think are having a bit of a review, which is fair enough. And look, everyone gets a bit upset paying landing fees and things, but let's also understand that airports cost money to run. There's insurance requirements, there's maintenance bills, there's people to run the thing. And I don't think anybody would begrudge paying a reasonable fee to have access to the airport and the facilities that it supplies. But when you start paying ridiculous amounts of money and money or prices rather that just are not realistic and sustainable, it really starts to become a bit of a concern. And that's what's going on up here in Darwin at the moment. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on, but I would be very interested to know, just as a general topic of discussion, are you having some price hikes in your local area and your airport, and maybe parking fees, access for parking, landing fees, that sort of thing? Are you sort of feeling like you're not really welcome at your airport? I'd love to hear from you, and I will let you know more about what's going on up in Darwin in the next week or two once a couple of other meetings and things happen. Again, I don't want to impact on that process, but I will update you on that very, very soon. But yeah, things are getting a little bit crazy here. All right. So part of the GA transition course that I was running the other day, as you all know, if you've been following for a while, the 210 that I normally use had a bit of a wheels up, and that's well underway and getting repaired. Fairly minimal damage at the end of the day, but the engine's getting overhauled and new prop and that, of course. So I have been using some other aircraft, and this particular one is been supplied to me by Air Frontier, who have been fantastic in helping me out with aircraft and equipment to get the job done and to be able to continue offering the service to students here. Now, this particular day, this is the very first time I flew this aeroplane. And that's a little bit of important information, because when we get to know an aeroplane, we start to learn its little gremlins and the little things that go on in aeroplanes sometimes. And there's that one little gauge that just sort of flickers a little bit, or might overread a bit, underread a bit, or whatever it is. Anyway, this is my first flight to get to know this aeroplane. And I was flying with my student, and we did the run-ups and engine start, all that stuff was all fine. And we took off and headed out via VFR Route 2. Now, these are one of the routes that I'll show you when you come up to Darwin, but again, it's just right there on the VTC, and it heads out to Jacko's Junction and Adelaide River mouth. Anyway, it's probably about 10, 15 minutes in at this stage, and the Garmin 430 started to flicker a little bit, which I thought was a bit odd. And then it kind of just went out and died. Oh, and then I gave it a bit of a wobble, and it came back on. And so I thought, okay, maybe it's got a loose connection. Then the ADF started going a little bit funny. And then the Garmin 340, which is the annunciator panel, the one where you press COM1, COM2 and all that, that went out. And then it came back. And the transponder was on, and that was okay. And I thought, right, this is just really odd. It's just a funny connection. Now, like all things with airplanes, you tend to associate symptoms with things you know, which is either from previous experience or dealings with previous aircraft or whatever else it is. And the other aeroplane that I've been using was having very similar issues, because there had been some loose connections and this and that, the other. And we got all that fixed. So I had a little bit of confirmation bias going on here. I thought, Now, in the back of my head, I was thinking, this could be an electrical issue. But this aircraft had fitted a center zero ammeter, and it was ever so slightly left of zero, but it wasn't showing a discharge. And there was a little red light globe close to that gauge. Wasn't labeled, but I assume it was a low voltage light. Could have been a high voltage light, but that wasn't illuminated, which is what would happen if the alternator had failed and the aircraft was running on battery power. So we continued flying south. We were outside controlled airspace at this stage, and did a few turns and this or that, and the other as part of our proficiency check maneuvers. And we then did a glide approach. We got some flap down. That was okay. Gear came down just fine. Gear went back up, and no dramas. But then the radios went out. And I thought, okay, that's a bit weird, but we had the COM2 on. Now, COM2 was making a funny, weird squealing noise, and I'd say this is because of the low voltage. But again, the ammeter wasn't discharging. There's no voltage light. And I thought, man, there's just something going on with this radio panel. We continued on a little bit more and went to do another glide approach a bit further on after some more maneuvering. And that was it. The gear did not come down. The intercom and everything just went completely out. We were now a dark cockpit as far as no lights, no intercom, no radio, no electricity, no power whatsoever. And I thought, yep, okay, it was the alternator. So that was a bit annoying because we could have conserved power a bit more. I'd turned some radios off because they weren't working properly anyway. But I just isolated it to one. But as it turned out, it was the alternator that had failed. So our battery had now gone flat. So now we're faced with no intercom between us, so we had to sort of talk loudly. We had no gear, had no flap, had no radios, no transponder, no anything. So we had two choices. We could either head back to Darwin, or we could go to MKT, which is our local CTAF just outside of Darwin there, and that's where we do a lot of our flight training and where Darwin Flight Training is located. And I use the airstrip quite a bit for circuit work and that sort of thing. So the decision, which way do we go? Well, I want to go back to Darwin. That was natural. That's where my car is. That's where the maintenance is. That's where life's a little bit easier. But I had no radios. I had no power at all. So, of course, my Bluetooth headset's not working too good because the cable's buggered. And here's a question for everybody. I'm desperately trying to find where I can send my Bluetooth or my Bose headset to, because I've looked for replacement cables and they're a good 6 months away apparently. But if anyone else knows where I can get my Bose headset serviced at the moment in a reasonable time frame, please let me know. But yeah, no Bluetooth headset. So that would have meant I would have had to put the phone in my headset, underneath my headset on my ear, call approach if they were happy to have us. Now, what I mean by that is we would be a primary radar return only because we've got no transponder. So they can't give us a code. They can't see precisely where we are. What a primary radar return looks like is basically a big flying pole around the sky. So they can see where we are, but where up and down vertically on that pole, i.e. our altitude, they can't see. That's what bare bone basic mode C transponder readouts would give us or give them. All right, so it would be a primary return only. They might be okay with that, knowing that, it's like a dual flight and I'm on board. So if we tell them we are where we are and we're going to do what we're going to do, then they can have some confidence in that. But it does add greater traffic separation issues and other things for them. And it was, that 4 o'clock, 4:30 busy everybody coming back into Darwin time. So I wasn't very keen on that. Not to mention that we'd also have to do a flapless landing, which is not a big deal, but a manual gear extension. I'd also have no green light to show that the gear was down and locked. So it's a quasi pan emergency situation. It would be effectively a emergency landing. It's not a big dramatic thing, but certainly not a mayday. Whilst I've got no radios or anything else, the aeroplane's at no risk of falling out of the sky. Spark plugs are all taken care of. Why? Through the magnetos. That's why we have magnetos for this exact situation where the alternator has died and then the battery's now died. If you're in a car and your alternator fails, your car will keep going with battery power, but once the battery dies, no more sparks, no more engine. You're pulling over to the side of the road. We've got magnetos, and that's what gives us electrical power as far as the engine spark side of things goes. So, yeah, if we did that, then it'd be emergency landing, the fire trucks would come out and all that sort of stuff, and I'd rather just avoid that whole situation. It was safer, quicker, and easier to divert into MKT. Now, there is a maintenance facility there. Boyd's there. He does an absolutely brilliant job. He's not the maintainer of this aircraft, but it's somewhere where he can land, keep the aircraft safe, and get any assistance on the ground if we needed it once we landed. So I gave him a buzz message and let him know our situation and that we were coming in to land shortly. And we pulled out Oz runways, had a look. There was one helicopter that had just landed. Now, that was useful information because we couldn't radio call anybody. We couldn't tell anybody we were coming. So the only other thing I could really do was keep an eye out. And we flew our circuit. We lowered the gear nice and early. And like I said, we've got no green light. So normally when the manual gear or the undercarriage comes down, even if we're doing a manual gear extension in training, we've got some form of electrical power to get a green light. In this case, it was the real deal. We had no green light at all. So where the undercarriage position in the 210 out our windows is very important to know that, yep, that's in the full forward position of where it should be. And we've got our mirror that we can see the nose wheel is down and forward as well. We can't 100% tell it was locked though. And I'll tell you how I sort of went about that in a minute. So we briefed each other on exactly what's going to happen. Now, normally in a situation like this, the instructor might elect to take over. I let Amy keep flying. We talked about it all. I said, this is great. This is her first landing in the 210. And so quite a bit going on, but we just broke it down. We orbited in the area until we're ready to go. Then we joined the circuit, having a really good thorough look out for other traffic, and came down and did a manual gear extended flapless landing for her first landing and did a really great job. We got a little bit high, so I just took over and tidied that up a little bit more and then back on profile. And we then touched down and landed safely. Now, I mentioned about the gear. One of the good things about the 210 undercarriage is the main gear goes forward and over center when it extends. So even if it's actually not locked properly, as long as the main gears are in that forward position, the weight on wheels will hold them in that position. It's only if they're not properly extended that if we were to land, they'd then fold backwards again and fold up, which was obviously not what we wanted. Short final, I gave the manual gear system another pump just to make sure the pressure was solid and the undercarriage didn't move, which it didn't. So that pretty much told me that, yep, everything's where it needs to be and working well. Had another good look in the mirror. Everything looked like it should. Once we touched down on the mains, we kept the nose wheel off the ground. I took over and just had a little bit of power as I lowered the nose wheel just to make sure, yep, it's definitely staying in place, and then closed the throttle and we rolled down to the end of the runway to where Boyd's hangar is and rolled in and shut down. So all went well. Fantastic experience for Amy. Is her first, not to mention just landing in the aeroplane, but her first genuine failure. And I would have to say, this is probably about my 6th alternator failure. It's one of the most common things after a vac pump that you're likely to have as an aviator, I'd say, in light aircraft, piston aircraft. It's nothing disastrous, but like anything, mishandled, misunderstood, rushing and or panicking or not doing things properly can definitely end up making a relatively controlled situation worse. So, yeah, as we found out, the alternator was indeed completely shagged out. The ammeter needle was a little bit sticky. That all got fixed. And I flew a day and a bit later when we were ready to fly again, and aircraft didn't skip a beat and all worked well. So big thanks to, again, like I said, Air Frontier for just providing the aircraft and helping us out there. So I've got something to continue flying until my regular X-Ray Golf Juliet gets back on its feet, so to speak, and getting the aeroplane back up and running as quickly as they did. So thanks, guys, for all of that to Jeff and the team. All right. So I would strongly recommend having a bit of a look at your electrical failure scenario. And there's a lot involved with no radio entry procedures, manual gear extension, flapless landings, all those little bits and pieces, and the symptoms that are leading up to it. Again, the radios usually work okay. You can receive, but when there's low power, if you're trying to transmit and it doesn't work, that's a good sign as well, because it takes a lot more power to transmit than it does to receive on a radio. But yeah, those radio things, again, really, I should have just been like, yeah, this is definitely 100% alternator failure problem. This doesn't make sense. Just turn everything off. And we pretty much had everything off as it is. We did a 1.7 hour flight and managed to get the radio or the battery to last quite a while. Again, I don't know exactly at what point the alternator did fail. because, again, I didn't have that discharge indication, but turning off most of the things definitely worked and helped extend the life of the battery, but wasn't enough to get the gear out again. All right. So, yeah, definitely revise those procedures. Get your instructor to take you through it all so that you would feel comfortable and confident how to handle it. And, again, that decision-making process of where am I going to go? It might not necessarily be where you wanted to, but, again, MKT, it's a half an hour car ride back to Darwin. Someone could have come and got us. We could have got a taxi or an Uber if we had to. Plenty of options and far less stressful and a hassle for everybody than trying to go into Darwin with no comms, no transponder, no visibility, no landing lights, no nothing. So much better, safer option there. All right, guys, that is it for this week. Thank you for joining me again. And I will see you all next week. Until then, if you'd like to ask a question, if you'd like a topic raised or anything else you want to talk about, please send me an info. Don't send me an info. Send me an email at info@trentrobinsonaviation.com.au and I'll be happy to have a chat to you and talk to you there. If you're interested in doing any flight training with me, I would love to do that with you. Pretty much really just focusing on the geo transition training, multi-engine IFR instructor training at the moment, IPCs, FPCs, all that sort of stuff. And I could do EPCs as well, which are the examiner proficiency checks, if you're interested in any of that. And we will also have a look at any other ab initio training, PPL training. Whilst I can do that, I push all that down to the team at Darwin Flight Training. We work together that way. So Scott's doing a fantastic job down there and he would love to see you also. So either way, you can email DFT or you can email myself and we will work together to ensure that you get the best training possible, the best service, and have the most fun. Remember, this whole thing about flying, it's meant to be fun. So we'll definitely make sure that that happens. And we've got in-house examiners. We can do pretty much everything there and get you done on time. No waiting months on end for an examiner to show up or anything like that. And beautiful, beautiful weather. So come on up and we'd love to see you here. All right, guys, until next time, as always, stay safe, blue skies, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.